Welcome to the CEO and the Salesman Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Whyatt. I'm the salesman part of the title. Each week, I sit down with CEOs and entrepreneurs to discuss and dissect their journeys, filled with triumphs, challenges, and some good old-fashioned business wisdom. Get ready to laugh, learn, and be inspired as we dig into leadership, strategy, sales, marketing, and everything in between. This is the CEO and the Salesman Podcast. Let's get on with the show. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the CEO and the Salesman Podcast, where we talk to leading tech entrepreneurs from Australia and New Zealand to uncover the ideas, the inspiration, and of course, the trials and tribulations that have gone into creating a successful tech business. Today, we're joined by Martin Bing from One Place Childcare, and Martin is a really interesting character. So welcome, Martin. How are you today?
Thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to sort of share a bit of my story, Matthew. Yeah, and going well. Yeah, thanks.
Fantastic. And you're in Auckland, aren't you?
I am in Auckland, and that is not a fake background. That is the metropolis behind me.
I actually knew I had a friend of mine who used to live in the metropolis. So yeah, I know the city well. I lived there a couple of times in my life. Now, look, I wanted to just jump straight into it. So I want to talk about your early career. Was there ever a particular defining moment that said that you defined it or you decided that tech is the place you want to play in?
It's funny you mentioned that because I'm a bit ancient. I did an IT degree, information systems degree back in Otago University in Dunedin, and I did a double major with accounting as well. But I went down this accounting route, and I didn't actually think about technology until I actually I was an auditor for my sins. And I used to work for EY, right? And I actually audited a number of technology companies, small ones, small subsidiaries out of New Zealand. And I wanted to get out of auditing. And as a result of that, I got a job offer from a software company out of the US, which was based in Auckland. And so that was the first time I really thought about, I quite like technology, sort of thing like that, which is a bit of a no-brainer now, but I don't know why I think about that earlier anyway. Yeah.
So what was it that actually sparked your interest? Was it just the fact that you saw the numbers and you thought, this is pretty cool, it's a product you can sell without actually ever having to ship anything? Or, so because often that's one of the things I hear from tech entrepreneurs is, technology and software in particular is something you can sell once or 1,000 times and it really doesn't degrade the quality. Whereas if you're selling, water bottles or glasses, you produce it, you sell it, now you got to go produce another one.
I think it's, I'll give you a bit more background too, because I actually went in as an accountant firstly, right? So I didn't actually sell initially, but I think one thing which I found interesting about technology is it's kind of always, it's kind of new and it's kind of like, I'm always sort of into gadgets, sort of thing like that. And I think that sort of interests me, whereas opposed, and I was kind of reflecting on this the other day that, if I had a chance to own my own business again, would it be any business, regardless of whether it was profitable or not? But in all honesty, I think I quite enjoy technology because I just am interested in technology for technology's sake.
Got it. Yeah, okay, fair enough. So in technology, in this world, how do you identify opportunities? So pivoting from, an auditor at one of the big four to now running a tech business, how did you identify or why have you gone with this particular opportunity?
Well, I could be dishonest and actually say I planned it all from the very beginning, which is absolutely not true. But I think what a lot of it is just, and it comes down to understanding what is there a problem to be solved here, right? And originally when I started the company, it was actually in the space of more accounting software or more for sort of tradespeople. And basically we had an opportunity where we had a client who was in the early childhood space who wanted a solution to help them manage their compliance, right? So it's all driven around what problem am I trying to solve, something like that. And I think we've got, especially, selling now, I've had that drilled into me time and time again, because in all honesty, coming from a finance background, we used to kind of see salespeople as not the enemy, but we kind of look down on them or, say, oh, those slimy.
Don't worry, most people still see salespeople as the enemy, even though it's pretty vital. If you, business like oxygen for a business. If you don't have sales, you don't have much of a business. But so many technology owners think that sales is the enemy. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, enemy is probably a bit of a strong word, but the person who's basically an expense line. But I mean, one of my old bosses kind of really put it quite well. Is that sales is really like the front of the boat, right? If you don't have sales, you don't really have anything else. But I think what really drilled it down into me is that salespeople are essentially trying to find solutions for prospects and customers. And if you're not finding a solution, then you're probably not the right fit for them, and that's perfectly fine. Whereas I kind of had this perception, I suppose, quite early on, as salespeople are kind of slimy and trying to sell anything to anybody, right? But I think that now that I am a salesperson as such and lead a sales-led organization, it's all about how do we find a solution? How do we solve a problem for people? And I think people tend to forget that.
Yeah, I just read a book called Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara, who started running a restaurant called 11 Madison Park, and then grew that from where it was over the course of about 7 years to the number one restaurant in the world, out of the top 50, they call it.
Yeah,
And his philosophy on service, rather than it being a job that you did
yeah,
because you had a uni to go to or something like that, is he was able to communicate with the team and inspire them to find ways of being in service, and that was of service. So much like sales, it's something that some people can do and can just fall into because it doesn't really require a lot of background or university degrees. But the value of it, when it's done really well, can take your organization to, well, as far as 11 Madison Park is concerned, the best in the world. And great salespeople can also do the same for organization, where when they really understand that the value that they bring, rather than just, oh, I want to go to cash my commission check. And that's how I started. I started out being very mercenary and just want to cash my commission check. But over the course of being in business for 25 years and selling prior to that, it's become more and more clear that it's a duty and an obligation and a responsibility to be able to represent the business successfully, represent it well, and also hold up the values of the organization, because the salesperson is the first point of contact in a lot of situations, other than marketing, of course, but the first real life human that they speak with is often a salesperson. And that's the person you want to have representing your business.
100%. And I think I think if you have a mindset, and I think that's what sort of really helped me in the sense of my sales journey, is understanding that I'm actually not, I'm there to solve a problem for the customer.
Yes.
And by solving the problem for the customer, as one of my other sales mentors says, revenue solves a lot of problems, for the company. If you don't have revenue, you're kind of stuffed, longer term anyway, sort of thing like that. So, but I think first and foremost, like you said, is that whether you're a for-profit organization or not-for-profit organization, your purpose of existence is to solve a problem. Because if you're not solving a problem, you're actually exploiting a customer, aren't you? You're actually
Correct.
trying to, and it's a very short-term sort of view on that. But like if you think of it, well, how do we help organizations to flourish, and how do we help them to grow and become what they should be? Then I think sales is actually quite a noble profession.
Thank you. I'll take that.
You can take that.
I'll take that. Any other salespeople watching this, please, because well, I don't want to, wax lyrical about how great it is to be a salesperson, but I love it. That's if all I had to do in a day was, talk to interesting people like yourself and sell things, that's my whole life. And also, starting this podcast is exactly that. I just like talking to people.
Yeah.
And so that is a salesperson's role. Hey, so Martin, what I want to ask you is, one of the things that I've been challenged by in the past when I've tried to grow my businesses, and I had at one stage about 70 people, but in reality, I only had about 12 because they were the sales and marketing people. Everybody else was, finance and support and tech. What is your philosophy when it comes to building a successful tech team?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of, because I've got a finance background, an accounting background, one of the things I'm most paranoid is about cash flow, right? And especially that making sure that we don't run out of money, and
It's pretty important.
yeah, well, but I mean, I think in the heady days of maybe in 2 or 3 years ago when valuation was very high and it was quite easy to get money, you can get into this false paradigm where you can easily raise money, but you fundamentally, but you're not actually focusing on, well, the fundamentals of the business is that, because ultimately you need to make a profit. You need to basically get to cash positive. to become a sustaining business. So, but there are certain businesses where you need to scale really quickly, because it's basically you've got to be the first. It's like a land grab. You've got to be the first organization to get as many customers as possible. And I kind of get that. I mean, in our sort of organization, a lot of it is how do we get good product market fit, and how do we sort of get customers on and sort of grow the business. Probably the criticism of our company is that we could grow a lot faster, but for me, I've sort of taken more of a conservative approach, and we had to raise capital, but we haven't had that big lick of cash, which also forces you sometimes to do things that you might not necessarily want to do. But for certain circumstances, I think that's appropriate in our type of organization. It's
Have those
about growing.
constraints Have those constraints caused the roots to go deeper? When we talk about fast growing anything, there's
Yeah.
lots of above the ground activity
Yes.
with, people and offices and acquisition. Often we've found in some of our clients is if there's growth is slower, that actually the roots are deeper and they've got better culture, better structure, a better ability to deliver. Have you found that yourself?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, I think if anything, one thing I was going to say actually, and I think you kind of triggered this for me, is having lots of money actually can you actually make you lazy? In other words,
Yes.
you can just throw money at a solution. And I know organizations like this, and they try to get, whereas having less resources makes you actually a bit more creative and a bit more lateral. And like you said, you get roots a bit deeper because actually you're all in the trenches together. You're trying to figure this out. You're trying to figure out a solution, and you don't have unlimited resources. And that's life, right? Often, most people don't have unlimited resources. But what you can become is a lot more creative in what the solution you provide. And once you've got that solution, then you can possibly scale up a bit more.
Yeah, got it. So circling back to my question about team is, do you have a particular philosophy about team? Do you have a way of thinking that you want to share with your senior management?
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, it's a bit the cliche, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think Peter Drucker said that. I think strategy is still pretty important, but I think having people who are in the organization that are really committed to the organization, who are, not jerks, who are really, who want to work with people and are like the can-do attitude, I think is really important. And, I've heard someone say this is a really good phrase that I want people to take the A game to the business, but I also want them to take the A plus game to their family and and to their lives, because I think a lot of us, I mean, I don't know about you, Matthew, but I've worked for other people before, and I know what it's like that you want to have balance in your life, but there are going to be certain seasons when you need to be work really hard. But I don't expect my people to ongoing to forget their relationships and their families, because that's the most important thing, because at the end of the day, this is a season in their time, but families are really important, and and their loved ones and stuff like that. Yeah.
Pardon me. We can pause that 1 second. Hope the editor can get rid of that.
Yep. That's be
Oh,
fine.
yeah. Yep. Cool. Damn it. I was going to say something interesting. I was going to.
And the A plus game, I can't claim that saying, but I thought that was actually quite insightful anyway.
Yeah, I like that. So with one of the things that actually came to me really early on, actually, let me start that again. Sorry, editor. Okay. One of the really interesting things that I worked out probably a little bit too late in my career is I heard a saying I saw a stage conversation where the person was up on stage and the entrepreneur was asking them a question, and the entrepreneur said, "Well, how do I get my team to care as much about the business and work as hard as I do?" And the guy said, "That's impossible. What are you thinking? This is your business, your baby, your thing. Your employees are being paid to be there. It's not their passion often. It could be their passion, but it's unreasonable to expect people to work as hard or do as many hours as the entrepreneur." So how do you work with that? You talked about the A and the A plus game. How do you work within that in your business?
Well, I think, I've been very blessed with people who are really committed to the vision, but I think also, so long as they understand also that, that we also recognize they have a life after that, as well. But I think committed to the vision, I think if you can actually show them where you're going, right, and they feel respected and have dignity and well treated, I think people can actually be quite committed to and work really hard. And I know for our team, they work especially hard, and I'm very grateful for that. So I mean, when you look at sort of examples like reading the autobiography of Steve Jobs and Apple and a lot of those US companies, a lot of these people work their guts out because they believe in the vision. So I don't necessarily agree with what that guy originally said, but but I think there has to be balanced as well, as what I'm saying is that that people don't consider themselves as being expendables as well. I mean, to a degree, that unfortunately there will be times when you've got to make hard economic decisions that sometimes you may have to restructure, but hopefully people will recognize that so long as you're upfront with them and like that. Yeah. So did I answer your question or not, Matthew?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's fine. Perfectly, Martin. When thinking about, dear.
That's why we can cut this all out,
Yeah, we can cut all this out, but just boy, oh boy, I'm just going to
have
cough
a
again.
good
Sorry.
cough here, Matthew. Have a great cough. That's okay with these long pauses because you can cut those out anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, cut all this out. So leadership and growing a business all looks great on the surface, but can you tell me about a particular time that you had to make a hard strategic decision or a hard decision, and how you came around to that, and the impact of the team, and how you were able to, was there a time when you had to bring the business back together after a challenge?
Yeah, I think I would say, I mean, we had a situation a few years ago where there were some challenges around some disputes, sort of thing like that. And sometimes you always think the worst in those situations, right? And I think, talking to the team and also getting help from my wife and friends about this sort of stuff, we just sort of work through the process, I think. Obviously, sometimes some of your concerns, you don't want to tell everyone in the company because you don't want them to freak out as well. But I
Yeah.
think I'm very blessed also with I've set up even though a private company, set up a proper board, and having my directors sort of who've kind of been there and done that has been very helpful to me. And sometimes you just got to set that, sometimes you just got to get through it, sort of thing like that, But I think sharing the load is very important, and sort of then sort of moving forward with the best possible way you could go. And just keeping people informed, I think, is helpful.
Can you tell me a bit more about the board setup? Because I think that having an advisory panel and a board would be massively beneficial to most businesses out there. How did you go about setting it up?
Well, I've decided, pretty early on that, um, I don't know everything, right? So it's quite good to get people who've actually had a bit of more experience, a bit of more life experience and these sort of things. So I was just fortunate that I just approached people who knew people who I thought, they were quite, they'll be really good to sit on the board. And most of these people are doing it, they're not doing it for the money, to be honest. They're doing it because they want to help you out. And I think they are the best type of board members often, because if someone there who's just there for a paycheck, they're probably not necessarily the right motivation. Obviously, you need to pay them, and whether you pay them in stock or, and money, it depends on where you are in your life cycle of your business. But I think having people who you can talk to and who are, as someone said, the CEO job is quite a lonely job. And one of my directors said that, and just having someone that you can sort of confide with, say, hey, and bounce ideas is really useful, is really helpful, I found. So to answer your question, I think a bit like you, I kind of like meet people, and you meet different people, and then you identify, oh, that person would be quite good to maybe have on the board or an advisory board, sort of thing like that. So that's how I've approached it, rather than getting professional directors in.
And so do you have a particular cycle of meetings? So is it monthly or quarterly? And then do you then share I'm asking you a double barrel question here. So meeting cadence, but also are they then able to or empowered to hold you accountable for the KPIs or the goals that you've set?
We meet quarterly, and we used to meet monthly, but we decided we probably don't need to meet monthly. We can meet quarterly, and yeah, they do hold me accountable. But I think what I try to do anyway is not like I don't talk to them every 3 months. I actually talk to some of them, when I need to talk to them, and ask them questions about certain things. And one of the things I also would suggest is having people with different strengths. So one of my board members is um, he's got a lot of experience in sales and marketing, especially marketing, sort of thing like that. So having those different strengths and different board members, yeah.
So speaking of marketing, what has been your most successful marketing campaign or marketing strategy that you've undertaken?
I think um, Oh, that's a good question. Let me think about that. I think we are producing content around, like, we're in the compliance space, right, in the early childhood sector, and we actually produced a report which kind of was a survey of some of the compliance providers around how they found about compliance, and we basically produced this report around that. And the great thing about AI at the moment is that you can interview people and you can summarize all this information really quite quickly with AI, right? And you can produce this nice report, which isn't printed, which is a PDF, but it serves as a bit of a lead magnet for people. And so we produce a lot of our own content, and like what you're doing here, Matthew. And I think that's been really successful in the sense of just engaging people, and also I think just interviewing people even for short snippets of prospects and customers. Like, we have 5-minute, 5-second, 30-second chats, which we put on social media, and all of that stuff is now quite cheap and easy to do, but is actually quite powerful, because I think unfortunately, my brain has been a bit neutered, your short span of attention, right? And people are looking for short span of attention sort of things, but having as a lead into a bit more of a fuller document or content.
Absolutely. So that's exactly what we're seeing working as well. The video content, put out as much as you can, because I think people want to, well, not I think, people want to engage with the brand through the personality of an individual, and whether that individual is a customer or, I just spent a couple of days in Canberra doing interviews for one of my clients, and those conversations are going to be broken up. Those conversations are going to be sent out to other. They want to see that other people have actually done this, because there's almost an unlimited. You can never get to the bottom of social media now. You can't scroll. You can't get to the end where the credits come up and go, thanks very much. That's enough Instagram today.
Yeah.
So there's never an end to it. There's never so the volume that's out there, you will never watch all of it. You'll never watch a fraction of it. And so therefore, a person wants to be able to engage with the brand, engage with the business in some way. And those types of conversations are useful. Certainly if somebody's looking at the business, who's looking to buy, looking to engage them to do, whether it be the compliance for the childcare or whatever it might be. We're just finding that more and more video content, more and more exposure of the entrepreneur, whereas in the past, you could almost be an anonymous entrepreneur and have your marketing message and just, good copy and good headline go out there. But today it's getting more and more difficult to cut through, and therefore humans are the one that cuts through, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's quite ironic, isn't it? We were talking about this the other day, is that, we live in probably the most connected world, yet we have the epidemic of loneliness, don't we? And meaning. But to answer your question, I think what people are looking for is authenticity.
Yes.
I'll see personas of people who are like them talking about the product. And I think the great thing about content now, you can dice and slice it, you can use it multiple times. And it's quite different from, traditional marketing that we had even 20 years ago. But I think the big problem is all the noise around everything, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I find sometimes, you sometimes see content and it is all staged, and you can kind of tell it's staged as well. Whereas if you actually have people talking about real problems and real solutions, I think that works well.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that we found is the more authentic, the more clear, the more authentic, the better. And that is just, it just continues to, and that's the advantage that smaller businesses have, is they can put the entrepreneur, they can put people in front of the camera. Whereas if you wanted to go out to Salesforce or HubSpot, it's difficult to, I can't even, right off the top of my head, I can't think of the CEOs of those businesses. So it is, I'm sure it'll come to me before the end of the podcast, but those types of things are vital. What's interesting actually is on my Instagram feed, I'm now seeing the CEO of Instagram doing pieces of camera, literally holding his phone or doing a piece where it's giving people tips and tricks on how to use Instagram better.
Yeah.
It's the CEO of Instagram is doing it. I'm sure that I'm sure that
I might try that actually.
And he is literally sitting in his lounge room or in some nice environment saying, hey, this, and this is a great way to get more reach or more whatever it might be. And so he's answering the public, is answering the questions that come up. And one thing I often say to my clients is if you're lacking content or you feel that there's a gap and you don't have anything to say, go to your sent items. Go into your email, go to sent items and look at the questions you're answering.
Yeah.
Look at the conversations you're having.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in doing that, then you'll see that, person A asked me about this. Well,
Yes.
I can do a video about that. I can do a blog about that. I can
Yes.
communicate about that.
I think also, you know, I think the trouble of a lot of marketing for smaller businesses anyway is it's just getting around to doing it. And I think that where people like you consultants are involved is actually a really good thing. I mean, we've got a marketing manager and a team to help him. But I think, we made that investment because I know it's a dedicated task. It's not like an afterthought. And I think that's where, organizations like you can be really helpful for smaller businesses who can't really necessarily afford a full-time person.
Absolutely. And also we are able to, because marketing is such a multifaceted thing, whether
Yes.
it be, video or content or
Yes.
or technical, there's a giant technical capability or component of marketing where you can, follow people around the internet and call remarketing. You can also,
Yeah.
you can set up a Facebook ad. So I set up Facebook ads 10 years ago and they did nothing. And then I had an expert look at them and they went, these are the things you've done wrong. And they
Yeah.
nothing changed with the copy, nothing
Yeah.
changed with it. And they took off. And I've never looked back since. So it's interesting that you can do the job. It's like giving me a Formula One car. I'm not going to be able to get anywhere close to Max Verstappen. We might be in the same car, but very different skills to actually deploy those to race. So that's the importance of marketing, and businesses like mine or any type of outsourced marketing business. They've got on staff the 15 different capabilities that can deploy a successful campaign. Whereas the challenge with internal is that doesn't matter how good a person is, they're not going to have 15 specialities. You can't, but just by the nature of it, you can't be specialized in 15 areas. So yeah, that's why a business like mine exists as well, Martin. So look, moving back to you, I don't want to talk about me. Has there been any significant setbacks that have sort of marked a time in your business? You go, this is something we won't repeat, or this is a great lesson for us to build upon.
I think the biggest lesson I learned is how important sales is, right? And just getting
Right.
to a point to invest in a proper salesperson, or because we're in the US and Australia, and just investing in someone in those locations to actually sell, who's connected with people and stuff like that, and it's hard, when you're starting, especially going to new jurisdiction, the hardest thing is actually finding the right person, because unfortunately salespeople are great at selling themselves, but often, sometimes they may not be the right fit, and also the cost of a salesperson, right? You've got to have that cost, and if you get it wrong, that's a lot of money that you can lose out. But having said all that, just having the right people, salespeople dedicated, who's actually a salesperson, not a hype, that I think has been the biggest lesson for us, and that's what made the biggest difference. It's just having someone focused on sales.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And all the companies that I'm working with that actually are growing, they've decided to put significant amount of energy, time, and effort into that sales and marketing function. Whereas a lot of the smaller businesses that I've worked with and tried to help is that 90% of the energy and effort goes to delivery, product and service delivery. And sales is if I just build a really cool thing, the world will be the path to my door. Yeah. And it's just not the fate.
Technology companies make that mistake, don't they? Build it and they will come, and they kind of, this is, they build feature and feature, but this is not teaching to suck eggs, but it's all about minimum viable product. Get something out there. Try to get a customer in and iterate. And I think that's a really good lesson. And I think the good thing now is my first major technology companies were in the 90s, but what I find now in the 2020s is that there's so much good content out there of how to run SaaS companies and how to run this. There's so much more. A lot of it's all metric driven, but there's so much more knowledge out there that's easy to come by. Whereas when we were in the 1990s, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, there wasn't. We had to figure it out. But the great thing now, especially in technology companies also, Matthew, is that it's so much easier. The bar to start a company is so much easier now. And as you said, you can start a company in New Zealand or Australia and you can start selling to the world. Whereas in the old days, you had to physically go there and sell your wares and stuff.
Well, that's right. Well, I think I was mentioning the other day, my first company, we put adverts in the back of the newspaper.
Yeah.
And for our younger listeners, you might need some Google for the rest of this conversation.
What's a newspaper? Yeah.
Yeah, so we would put adverts in the back of the newspaper with a 1-800 number, which is a free call number, and that people would actually pick up the phone based on a 5 centimeter long ad by 1 column wide, piece of copy. We wrote pretty good copy back in the day, and that copywriting skill has flowed through. That's one skill we've never really sort of not over-indexed on. And so that produced hundreds of leads a month. Because people would make a 1-800 number phone call. We never did. Back in the day, we never did any outbound calls because we had such a volume of inbound calls from our advertising. We just never needed to. So it's so marketing has changed. It's become more difficult. Sales has become more difficult because the trust needs the level of, I guess, people have been conditioned to not trust. Like you said, not trust salespeople. Everybody's got a story, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So just speaking about that, what's the most common misconception that you've seen in building a tech business?
Realize how hard it actually is. I think you always see stories about people who, sell their company for billions and billions of dollars or millions and millions of dollars, right? But what they kind of forget, and maybe early on, I remember when the iPhone first came out, there was a guy, I think he created this game which was like chopper lifter or something like a helicopter
Flappy
game.
Bird.
Something like that, and he made millions, right? But it was like a very, one-off opportunity where there was no competition. Whereas nowadays, because the bar is a lot lower, there's so much more competition. And there's so many parts of building a business, it's like you got to get product market fit, you got to get, you got to get software developed, you got to get customer services, you got and all these things, which and I think that's what I find kind of interesting. It's a bit like a Rubik's cube. You got to get all these things all orientated, and it takes time, and often, we kind of think it's like it's like a quick win thing, but it's not. My personal thing, and maybe I'm a bit slow, but it takes time, and I think sometimes we celebrate too, sometimes in the media, and so we celebrate all these people raising all this money, but actually, what are we celebrating? All we're doing is celebrating the raising money, but that's not the success. Success is really that, they made a good exit, or they're very profitable, and all those sort of things. So I think it's like a lot of these things that, when you look at Roger Federer, how such a great tennis player, but you don't realize how much time and effort he's gone to train, and how many hours and hours and hours he's gone to perfect the perfect swing.
Yeah, and it's like that survivor bias as well. There's a story about how if World War II planes would come back and there would be bullet holes in them, and they go, well, these are the areas that we need to reinforce because they've got all the bullet holes in them. Well, what they didn't realize is they should have actually been don't bother reinforce those areas because they're the planes that returned. The ones that didn't return are the ones that got shot in the areas that they didn't see the bullet holes, because if there was a bullet hole there, they probably blew up. So there's also a massive survivor bias when it comes to technology businesses. Oh, well, all they did was do a ChatGPT wrapper, or all they did was connect this person and this person. Well, that's fine, or create Flappy Birds for the App Store. But there's probably been 50 other versions of that where people have put their house on the line and it's not been successful. So, or maybe 500. So you're absolutely right. It is quite difficult to run a successful tech business. Well, like any business, actually. I'm sure I'd hate to run a cafe. I'm sure it's very, very difficult to run a successful cafe.
Yeah.
That would drive me crazy. I've got a friend of mine who runs a cafe, and they got a whole bunch of other problems, like staff and suppliers and all those types of things. That's not for me. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Also, that as people say, there's a bit of luck and a bit of timing, and I would argue it's quite serendipitous. I think I remember watching this YouTube video once. They kind of, these VCs did a sort of like a sort of analysis of all these successful tech companies, and do they sort of identify, well, is it the person, is it the product, is it timing, is it and in the end, a lot of it's timing, of just having the right product at the right time, because there were more success, like think about YouTube, there were actually providers who provided video on demand before that, but it just wasn't the right time, and the bandwidth wasn't there. You're doing dial-up, but YouTube just came around at the right times. Again, but at the same time, you got to be, as I say to my children, you got to be in the game. You kind of make your luck as well.
Yeah.
And if you don't do
And
it,
also,
then, yeah,
yeah, and also, often there was, back in the early days of YouTube, I remember um, they wouldn't allow commercial products to be uploaded there as like an advert. They wanted to be a
really,
creator platform. Yeah.
wow, wow.
So way back, because I think I started my first tech business in 1999. So we're not too different in our
Oh, no,
how
no.
old we are.
No, well, at
So
least 30. Well, at least 30, aren't we? Because we started at 5. Yeah, yeah. So,
yeah, that's right. That's exactly
that's
it.
like, it's just out of nappies. Yeah.
Just keep buying more and more modern T-shirts. Hopefully, I can get away with pretending to be
That's right.
younger all the time.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that was how they wanted to position themselves originally. Obviously, it's completely changed and taken a tangent from now, but it's the early execution, that it's the timing, and also
Yes.
I fully admit that my first business, we grew very, very successfully. I reckon 50% timing. At least 50% was the timing of the market, because that's what people were able to, wanted to buy at the time. They thought it was cool. And also back in those days, it was felt that technology was almost magical. I think Arthur C. Clarke said any significantly advanced technology will look like magic. And it really did, back in the early days, it really did look like magic what we were doing,
Yeah.
able to so, and then of course now AI is doing that magic piece. And so what's the next piece after that? So Martin, speaking of technology, what are you most excited about in the future? You're running the business today. You've been in technology, a couple of weeks now. And so what are you most excited when you look forward for your business and for the technology landscape?
Well, I suppose you expected me to say the answer was AI. To a degree, it is. But what I'm most excited about, I mean, we run we're starting to create a community for early childhood providers so they can manage their compliance. And what I'm more excited about is the network effect of providing our system not only to multiple centers but also to the other providers. So we're providing an ecosystem of content and with government organizations as well as sort of associations as well as the early childcare. So I suppose what I'm interested in the sense of technology is bring all that network together in a technology in a community. So it's not necessarily technology so much, but in the sense of my vision for what we're trying to do. Yeah.
I think that's fascinating, Martin. So when you say community, how are you going to how are you going to bring that community together? Have you got using a platform to run that community? Are you doing in-person events? How does that come
Well, this
together?
is all I suppose I'm saying digitally, through APIs and all that sort of stuff, which is, that's not necessarily new, but in the sense of bringing together all these different platforms, all this different sort of providers into one place.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. Well, look, if you could think back to your younger self, I know we might have banged the drum of us being a bit older a little bit too much in this conversation, but if you could just think back to your younger self, what advice would you give to your younger self or what advice would you give to a young person starting out today?
Yeah, I mean, I give this advice to my daughters, but unfortunately they roll their eyes, but I'm going to tell you it anyway. But I would sort of say, I think going into business is a lot of fun, right? Is because you can work for a corporate or something like that, but you don't necessarily have your own sort of the ability to make your own decisions and stuff like that. So I would recommend to young people to give things a go. It may be in a business, it may be in a company, but not worry about mistakes because when you're younger, it doesn't really make a difference as much.
Mhm.
And actually, you learn from mistakes as well. But I would sort of say start a business, give it a go, and start something that you're really quite interested in. I think that really helps, that you're quite passionate about because I'll use old phrase that, if you're passionate about things, it doesn't feel like work essentially, right? So that's one thing I would sort of start. I would sort of say start things and take risks. I mean, again, lots of people have said this before as well. Yeah, so that would probably be one of the things I sort of would say to myself.
Start things and take risks. I absolutely love it. Martin, really appreciate your time today on the CEO and the Salesman Podcast. Thank you so much for your insights. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Well, the last thing I would sort of say is that I think, being in business, some people have quite a negative view on businesses being sort of like, being capitalists and stuff like that, but I think, part of being business is how do we actually better society, while, believe, my four sort of things are this is that, a business should be like, you're solving a problem, right, for customers, you're helping them, you're building up your employees, you're providing a return for shareholders. I think that's really important, or for stakeholders. And secondly is, how do we make the community, how do we sort of help redeem, how do we create redemptive spaces in the community as well. So I think having those four things is really important. So that's my last message.
Thank you very much, Martin. Really appreciate your time today. Talk to you soon.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.